What's up, guys? It's Key here, and this is my first official video where I actually talk about something like an actual thing. So, for this video, I'm actually going to be talking about how to react when you're healing. I just really wanted to talk about this because, as I explained, like on my intro video, that I want to talk about things that I've experienced and what I learned from them, most importantly. And, just as a disclaimer, this is not me pretending that I'm a therapist and I'm giving like expert advice because I'm not qualified in this. I don't know anything about it, but I know my experience, and I just feel like that there are just some things that are general, because I understand that each journey and what we're dealing with is very unique to the individual. So we're not dealing with the same things. We don't all have the same life stories, and therefore that means our healing process and everything is not going to be the same. Our journeys are not going to be the same. But I just feel like, with each and every journey, there is a way of understanding how to participate within the journey itself and within whatever you're going through. And these are just my experiences, and this is just something that you can take from it, something that you want to take or don't, or if you're just here to listen, that's all. Or maybe you have advice for a better way of dealing with this, then for sure I'm welcome to getting that as well, because again, healing is an ongoing thing. It never stops. But the thing I wanted to talk about is how to react when you're healing, right? Which I think is a very important thing, because when we go through things in life, whether we're healing from like past traumas or like recent traumas, and of course the type of healing I'm talking about here is of course emotional healing. There are certain layers that come with emotional healing and emotional pain, so to say. And I think so it becomes a bit harder for us to react a certain way to healing, and also not understanding sometimes when you're healing. It's also very hard to tell at times if this is a process of healing in any case. Like for instance, within my case, my healing really happened like very rudely, I'd say. It really was like a rude awakening, and I felt like I had to go through like a very hectic experience for me, that really I felt like wiped me clean. Within 2020 and 2021, I felt myself being stripped of my sense of identity, my sense of what I understood, what being a human being was, my sense of confidence, my sense of independence, all of the things that I had built up because of my life experiences. I built up to understand, you know, being a person and being human and navigating life in that way, a certain way. I built it up in my head that this is my strategy, this is the way I'll go about in life. And I felt like those 2 years really just took that down, and I had no sense of anything. I had no sense of pride, no sense of confidence. I had like really low self-esteem. I was really overly attached to the people around me, to friends, to family. I had like intense abandonment issues, and it really was hard. Every single day was hard, and it took time for me to understand that that was my beginning of my healing. And when you look at it like that, you wouldn't necessarily say that's healing, because like that was brutal. That was like for me, and it was really quite an experience, that took time to understand as to what it was. But once I understood that, sometimes I always use this ontology of analogy. I always use this analogy of the universe being like, what, when it wants to find balance, it always goes through like very rapid phases, like, it becomes very disruptive, and that's a way of it finding balance again and finding that harmony. This was even before that. I had this analogy in my head, but when it happened and it was happening, I did not understand it in that way. If anything, what I found myself doing is fighting everything that was happening and I felt like that was doing more damage than it was doing any good, because I was almost like fighting an experience that I was fighting a something that was inevitable, which I think is such an important thing in understanding, healing, is that it's tricky at first. It's tricky understanding when it's happening. There won't be like, some sort of sign, right? That's very clear. There won't be, somebody holding it up for you and be like, oh, hey, that's healing. Well, I mean, a therapist probably could, but they won't necessarily tell you straight up that, okay, this is what's happening right now. They just understand you as you go through something, right? And then they'll try and help you through this thing. But the attitude that you have towards that time, and what you're experiencing then, is very important. um, because you could either fight it, right, which will backtrack any progress, which will just make things worse instead of making them better, or you could accept that it's happening, right, and just allow things to happen and see where they go. Which again also is another scary thing, which for me felt like something that was insane and that was scary, because um, when you're somebody who is overly controlling, especially when it comes to your life. You want things to happen the way you want them to happen, because you always want to feel in control of your life. It's hard to let nature take its course, or to let the universe do what it needs to do, and then you just have to allow yourself to be, propelled forward in whatever way. It's very, very hard. So the biggest step is finding that acceptance, changing that attitude into an attitude of acceptance, and accepting that this is your journey. And just, as much as you should be passive in that you're allowing it to lead you to where, it goes, also be active in understanding that everything that you're going through is leading towards something. Everything that you're going through, there's a purpose in some way. There's meaning. There's a reason why you're going through the hardships you're going through. If you're going through hardships, even the good times, there's a reason why you're going through the good times. If it's good times. So it's very, very important to um, have I I'm very wary of saying the word positive attitude, because I think, in times of hardships, it's hard to really feel like you could be positive, or look, have sort of that outlook on things, and being pessimistic and all of that. But acceptance is more correct, I would say. It's more the attitude that you need to adopt. So you need to adopt really acceptance that this is my journey, and not try to control it, which is another important thing. Understand that this, will not happen on your terms, but on the terms that it's supposed to happen. It'll just happen as it's supposed to. The second thing is understanding that um, healing is not linear. And I think, and I know that's a cliche, but things are cliches because they're true. So that's a very important thing in understanding that sometimes you'll feel like you're heading somewhere. You'll feel like there's a certain, that there's a burst of positivity that you're feeling, like something that you just had a breakthrough somewhere, and then you find yourself that, say, a month later you're backtracking. You find yourself, that you feel like all of that progress, is not there anymore, because you got triggered by something, or something else happened towards the journey, and then you feel like you're starting from scratch. And again, comes back to that acceptance, understanding that it won't happen in a linear way. It's not one line where there's like a stop in each line, that okay, right now you've reached this point of your healing, and then off to the next point. Sometimes, it's cyclical. Sometimes it can go back to a previous point, and then you have to work your way up again. Hence it is said that it's non-linear. That you have to understand that there's layers to it, and that it'll take time, which is I think would be the third point, but connected to the second point, is that you have to be patient with yourself, patient with the process, um, and forgive yourself. I think is an important thing, you know, because, for instance, I felt like for quite some time, I felt like I wasn't doing what needed to be done to get me out of the situation, I was in. I felt like I wasn't, to a point where I would even ask my brain sometimes as to what's wrong, why can't you understand A, B, and C? Why can't you do A, B, and C? And it wasn't until I went to see a therapist who is actually the one who told me that you have to reparent yourself, right? You have to be the voice of comfort that you never had. And that changed a lot of things for me. At first, I didn't understand how to do that. I won't lie, I didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean? How do I do that? But it comes down to that inner voice that you have, that when you're doing something that you deem to be a mistake or a bad decision or whatever, and what do you say to yourself when that happens? Are you harsh on yourself? Are you scolding yourself? Are you calling yourself negative words and negative names, or are you soothing towards yourself and being understanding that you're human, you're learning, you're trying, you're going to stumble and fall, and then you're gonna get up and do better, and all of that is very important, when you're healing. It's very important to forgive yourself for reacting in a certain way, for acting a certain way. And of course, I understand that, we're not living in a bubble. There's no way that you can go and heal in a bubble, away from other people, where you'll be isolated. You live with people each and every day, so you interact with people. How you are and how you react affects the relationships you have, and that's another important thing as well. Is that's what makes it harder sometimes to be able to be patient with yourself, to forgive yourself sometimes, because you also are very wary of how you're acting out, towards people around you. You want to be good to the people around you who are good to you, and you also want to be able to heal as you're supposed to. And so therefore sometimes that kind of clashes, because it happens a lot that you react in certain ways. Sometimes you shut yourself off. Sometimes you're not as as humanely as possible, or as or a lively person that you usually are, because you're going through something. So now your interactions with people are not the same, and they take offense because they think you're just acting that way, and then you now bring this towards you, and also you put pressure on yourself because you feel like you're ruining things with the people around you and the relationships around you. And it's understanding that sometimes you come first, especially when you're going through a hard time, especially when you're going through things that you need healing from. It's you come first, so you must be able to forgive yourself even for things that are happening, and even for the way that you were reacting sometimes to situations around you, even if it might not be your intention. And most of the time when such happens, it's not necessarily because it's your intention, it's how you're reacting, and it's your defense mechanism towards what's happening to you. So you find yourself either shutting people out, or reacting, saying certain things, or for instance, in my case, I was very impatient, so I was quick to shut people off, or to shut them down, because I was super impatient, because there was so much I was dealing with. It was quite easy for me, if you come with your own things, for me to just blow a gasket, because also another thing I realized is that you become, as an empath myself, you become very wary of every energy and people's feelings. And so if people come with different energies and different feelings while you're in that vulnerable state, you can easily be affected because you're already so sensitive and you have this heightened sensitivity and this vulnerability. It'll hit you more than it should. And so sometimes you find yourself that you shut yourself from people or not want to listen to anything or interact with people in that way. And as much as it's harsh and it's rough, it'll be rough for the people around you, rough for you as well, because you don't want to react like that to people around you. But it's very important that you go through that, and it's very important that you forgive of yourself even through that, because it's necessary for you and your healing to be able to accept your journey, accept the experience, accept the hardships you're going through, because that is what's necessary for you to heal and to move forward. That's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. And hopefully that will help you out in some way. Or if you agree and if you feel like this is something also that you've gone through, or an experience that you're currently going through right now, yeah, do what needs to be done. Do not hesitate to comment and talk about your experience if you feel comfortable sharing. And you're also, of course, like this video, subscribe, all the necessary things for you to be able to catch me again next time. Take care of yourselves, and yeah, be patient with yourself, love yourself,